Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the class this morning. Visitors, I see we have visitors. We appreciate you coming this morning. We're in Colossians chapter 2, and we're on our fourth session, and we're still out of chapter 2, so maybe we can move on a little bit today. Thank you, Ron, last week for filling in with me. I appreciate it. I want to say something about the Jews before we start our lesson. I think sometimes when we read about the Jews and the struggles they had and trying to be Judaizing teachers, and sometimes I think maybe we have the wrong impression sometimes. There were good people in the Jewish nation. As a matter of fact, on the day of Pentecost, how many Jews obeyed the gospel? You think that was easy for them after years and years of the law of Moses and going through all the ordinances that they did, and the sacrifices and the feast and all of this. And all of a sudden, somebody comes and tells you, it's all different now. Can you imagine how hard that was? But they convicted them that they had killed Jesus, the Messiah, who they'd been looking for years and years and years. So sometimes we need to be careful about the Jews. The church of Jerusalem was what? Jewish Christians, wasn't it? Okay? So they turned it around. And when the apostles went out, the first thing they did, they went to the synagogues and they taught there, and the Jews believed, didn't they? Many of them did. Some didn't. But they still had that mystique of, you know what, this is what we used to do. And I can't imagine how hard that was. You know, you get up in the morning, probably first thing you do is you brush your teeth, you know. You get into a habit. Well, they had that down. They knew what to do. They knew what their sacrifices were. They knew they had to go to Jerusalem. They knew they had to do this. They knew the ordinances. And all of a sudden, someone comes along and says, that's gone. As a matter of fact, we're going to talk about it today. It's been nailed to the cross. So it was difficult for them. So I think we just need to be careful when we read about the Jews and the trouble they're having. We're in chapter 2, 14, 15, 16. Joe, would you read that, please?
Having canceled the written code with its regulations that was against us and that stood opposed to us, he took it away, nailing it to the cross. Having disarmed the powers and authorities, he made a public spectacle of them, triumphing over them by the cross. Therefore, do not let anyone judge you by what you eat or drink, or with regard to a religious festival, a new moon celebration, or a Sabbath day.
Okay. Blotting out the handwriting on the ordinances. When Jesus died on the cross, the old law was gone. It passed away. It was written by God, the finger of God. He wrote that in the Ten Commandments, didn't he? It was important to them. But now, Colossians, Christians, it's gone. You're not under that anymore. It doesn't apply to you anymore. And don't let somebody tell you that it does. And that's what he's trying to get across here. In verse 15, and having spoiled principalities and powers, he made a show of them, openly triumphing over them. Jesus came, and he did he have trouble with the Pharisees at times? And the Sadducees at times? And the religious priests at times? Absolutely. And the reason he did, they weren't applying the law of Moses. They weren't applying the law of Moses correctly, were they? And he defeated them in every case. Time after time, they said, well, let's try this. I think we can get him if we asked him this question. Every time he defeated them. And after a while, they began to acknowledge, well, we're just going to have to do what? We're just going to have to kill him. I mean, we can't defeat him by our intellect and our knowledge, and we can't. And they were oppressing, the leadership was oppressing God's people, and Jesus knew it. Was he angry about that? He was upset about that. And in every case, and I don't think he's talking about demons or anything like that in this verse, having spoiled the principalities and powers. I think he's talking about the Jewish leadership here. I think that's what he has reference to. And he defeated them on every case. Some guy comes up and says, I got a plan. I'll show him a coin. See how he explains this. Every time he defeated them. And in the verse number 16, it says, let no man therefore judge you in meat, and that's one thing that they were, Jewish law was under, or drink, or respect of a holiday, or the new moons, or the Sabbath days. What happened to the seventh day when when Jesus died on the cross? It's gone. It is gone. It's no more. The seventh day is no more, okay? And the seventh day applied to the law of what? Applied to the law of Moses. And Jesus rested when God rested when he created the world on the seventh day. But that's besides the Sabbath day he talked about in the law of Moses. Don't have a thing to do with it. That day is gone, okay? And again, it's so hard on the seventh day. This is what we need to do. No, this is what you need to do. No, you don't need to go to the feast anymore. You don't need to have animal sacrifices. If you do one thing in the law, what should you do? Everything. I can't imagine still being under that law with the law that we've got now. I can't even fathom how hard that was. But God, in his mercy and grace and knowledge, and Jesus sent Jesus and abolished all of that. It's gone. We don't have to do that anymore. We have a tendency to respect days, and we do it not from a religious standpoint, but what kind of standpoint? From a fleshly standpoint. Do you celebrate birthdays? Do you celebrate anniversaries? Do you celebrate Valentine's Day? Let me tell you a story about Valentine's Day. Judy and I hadn't been married very long, and Valentine's Day came along. And guess what? I forgot Valentine's Day, okay? Forgot it. I don't know. I think we were on the way to services. So there was a drugstore. Says, oh, I got it. I'll pop in there and I'll get something, and she'll never know, okay? So I popped in the drugstore. I found the cutest teddy bear you ever want to see, and I brought that out. Happy Valentine's Day. Well, the thing I didn't look at on that teddy bear, it was a baby bottle holder. And guess what? Guess how many Valentine's Days she remembers? She remembers that one Valentine's Day forever and ever. Rest of them, no, they don't mean anything. And that's sort of ironic, isn't it?
You made it memorable.
That's right. I sure did. The wrong way, Ron. But we do. Anniversaries. There's nothing wrong with that. And I know certain religions, and I'm not going to mention any, don't celebrate any day. No birthdays, no birth of their children. And that's fine if that's what they want to do. But it's nothing wrong with us doing it. It's not a religious thing. We don't worship that, do we? That's what they were trying to get these people to do. These special days were, it made them, supposedly it made them more holy by doing that, okay? We can't earn heaven because it's a what? It's a gift. We don't need that. We don't need special meats. We don't need special days. We don't need sacrifices. We need to obey the commandments of the Lord, okay? That's what he expects from us. And that's what they were trying to impose on these people. It sounds good, but it wasn't, was it? Which are a shadow of things to come, but the body is of Christ, okay? Who's he trying to tell the people they need? What person do they need? Jesus Christ, right? That's what we need. He died for us. Nobody else did that. So when we look to things that we need to keep in mind and that's important, it's Jesus Christ. That's what's important. We can't earn it. Now, he expects us to do things, but we can never do enough to earn heaven, could we? It's a gift. It's a gift. And we have a tendency as humans, just when somebody gives us something, we got to do what? We got to turn around and what? We have to turn around and give them something. No, that's not what it's all about. Giving is the important thing, okay? And you accept that from someone. If someone wants to help you, don't refuse them from helping you. That's a gift they're trying to give you. So we need to have that in our hearts, okay? I've seen a lot of people, oh, I got to pay him back. Well, he took me out to dinner, I got to take him out to dinner. Or they've had us over, we need to have them over. That's not part of it, is it? Accept that. And we have a hard time doing that, don't we? We think we need to pay it back. No, we don't. We need to just appreciate what that person did for us. Any questions so far?
It seems to me like the world, all of us, have a difficult time with that concept of salvation is grace given. Because just yesterday I was listening to the radio and they were saying, and so there's nothing we can do, but there is much we must do. And so it's kind of a dichotomy there that's hard almost to understand.
It is difficult, Patty.
You can't just be baptized in Christ and then that's it, you're done. You have to give yourself to him
Yeah.
and live for him. But you still don't earn it at all.
That's right. That is difficult for us. We have plenty of things to do, and talks about works all the time. We need to do good works, don't we? We need to bring forth fruit, but we don't earn it by doing it. God gives it to us, and that's hard for us to realize, isn't it? A good point. Just for that, Patty, I'm going to let you read, okay? 18, 19, and 20.
Let no one keep defrauding you of your prize by delighting in self-abasement and worship of angels, taking his stand on visions he has seen, inflated without cause by his fleshly mind, and not holding fast to the head, from whom the entire body, being supplied and held together by the joints and ligaments, grows with a growth which is from God. If you have died with Christ to the elementary principles of the world, why, as if you were living in the world, do you submit yourselves to the decrees?
Okay. Good. This was some of the things. Maybe there's a little bit of Gnosticism in here. I don't know, but trying to suffer for the Lord, or not eat, or hurt yourself, or go on fast, and those kind of things. That doesn't do it. We need to serve the Lord. We could talk about angels for a long time, but you know what? We know so little about angels, don't we? In Revelation chapter 23, I believe 8 and 9, angel appeared to John. And what did John do when he appeared to him and showed him these things? He bowed down to him, okay? And the angel says, no, you don't bow down to me. Who do we bow down to? We bow down to God. We don't bow down to angels, okay? We understand everything about angels. We understand that they're servants of God. We do understand that. But a whole lot about angels, we don't understand it. And we are not to worship angels. We're not. And that's what some of these people were telling them. Well, you've got to worship angels. No, you don't have to worship angels. And people were puffed up. Well, I worship angels. Why don't you worship angels? Well, that's not a good argument, is it? We don't have to do that. Who do we need to worship? The head, right? And not holding the head, from which all the body by joints and bands, having nourished, ministered, knit together, increased with the increase of God. That's the person. If we need to bow down to Jesus and to God, that's who we need to bow down to. Not an angel. If an angel brings you something that contradicts the Word of God, what do? If a man brings you a word that contradicts the Word of God, what do? We reject it. That's what the Bible teaches. We don't listen. If it's against God, we don't listen to that, do we? Okay. In verse 20, wherefore, if you be dead with Christ from the rudiments of the world, why? As though living in the world, are you subject to the ordinances? Now, he uses some terms here that people were trying to tell him they need to do. 21, 22, and 23. Julie, would you read that, please? 21, 22, and 23. All right, thank you. Okay. Touch not, taste not, handle not, okay? More restrictions, right? More restrictions that don't mean anything. Don't let somebody, and he uses the word in here, beguile. Yeah, and I was going to say in beguile. Guess what? That word beguile, what does beguile mean?
It means to trick you,
Okay.
to change your mind or actions through trickery or lies.
Okay. That's one of those 38 words that some of the religious guys said, Paul never used this word. Therefore, he didn't write the book, okay? One of those 38 words that he used in this chapter. Will people try to do that to you? They try to beguile you and say, well, you don't touch this. You don't taste this. You don't handle this, okay? No. Unless it's found here, then that's what we go by. Which things have indeed a show of wisdom in will worship and humility, neglecting of the body, not in any honor to the satisfying of the flesh. Okay. If you go on a fast and fast for 2 weeks, is that going to make you more religious, you think? Maybe you might think about God a little bit more and think you need some what? Think you need some food, okay? But it's not going to enhance your religious standing, is it? No, it's not. Whatever you taste or whatever you handle, it's not going to enhance anything that we can do for the Lord. We serve the Lord by the works that he tells us to do, okay? Do the works of the Lord. Do the commandments. Blessed are those who do his commandments. What will they get for that? It's one of my favorite songs. What if they do his commandments? A tree of what? Tree of life. The tree of life. All right, any questions about chapter 2? I know we spent a lot of time on it, and that's some of the problems they're having. But when we get into the next chapter, it's more about service to the Lord, okay? Putting the Lord first. Husbands and wives, those kind of things. more of the things that maybe we understand a little bit more. We don't understand everything about powers and principalities and those kind of things. We know they're there, but for deep down and angels, like I say, we know so little about angels that we probably need to stay away from it and try to understand what's in here about angels. Any questions about chapter 2?
We read about the disciples fasting, but it's always accompanied fasting and prayer. Fasting was used for one to be able to meditate upon spiritual things for themselves. What he's talking about here is doing it just to appear religious.
Right.
False humility.
And you're going to earn something by it. Right. Good point. Okay, Craig, would you read verse 1, 2, and 3, please, chapter 3?
Sure. Then you were raised with Christ. Seek those things which are above, where Christ is, sitting at the right hand of God. Set your mind on things above, not on things of the earth. For you died, and your life is hidden with Christ in God.
Okay. So our aim is to set our things on above, not the worldly things. And I know that's easy to say, isn't it? God expects me to do something, doesn't he? He expects me to take care of my family. He expects me to earn a living. He don't expect me to go home and sit down and do nothing. I guess the best way to put it, we need to do our part. Sometimes we fail in doing it, don't we? But God never fails in doing his part, does he? Sometimes we don't see it, but maybe a year later, 2 years later, it comes like a light. God was looking after me, wasn't he? Okay? So if we stand up and try to do something, are we going to fail sometimes doing that? Absolutely. We are. Matter of fact, we fail more than we succeed. You all remember Walt Disney. What a imaginative mind that he had. Walt Disney was a young cub reporter in Kansas. And one day, his boss called him in and says, "Walt, you just don't have it. You don't have enough imagination. I'm going to have to let you go." Walt Disney. I'm sure he was heartbroken over that. Well, we all know the story about Walt Disney. Years later on, and after he was successful, guess what Walt Disney did to that newspaper? He bought it. He bought that newspaper. So we can succeed. And sometimes we don't see a person's ability. You don't know what I do. And I don't know what you do. But I hope you're doing the best you can. And I'm trying to do the best I can. Sometimes we judge, our surface judgment is not correct all the time, is it? You never know how a person feels. Sometimes when somebody gets mad at me, I just thought, maybe they had a bad day that day. I'm going to give them a pass, okay? Because you don't know what happened at the house when they left the house. You don't know how much food they have. You don't know their wants or their needs. So we need to be careful with that, don't we? Set your affections on the things above, not on things of the earth. And that's what we need to do. I'm sure we got to earn a living. But we sure need to put God first. God first. God said he'd protect us. He's going to protect us. We're going to have enough to eat. We're going to have enough to eat. It amazes me that in this world there are people today that they'd rather steal something than to ask somebody for it. The prisons are full of that, of those kind of people. Too much pride to go and knock on the door. I know in Paducah, if you're hungry and you go to somebody's house and you're humble enough and knock on the door, guess what? They're probably going to feed you. They're probably going to feed you. We need to remember that. Because we may be in that same state sometime. For you're dead and your life is hid with Christ in Jesus, in God. How did we die in Christ? That's a good question, I think. How did this old man, how did you die in Christ? Christ died for us. How did you die for Christ? When you did what?
Scripture says you're buried
In baptism. That old man is gone. And that's a concept sometimes we have trouble to explain. And he's trying to explain it to these people here. You know, you lived terrible lives. You fornication, adultery, heresies, all those kind of things. And he'll say so in this chapter. You did all those things, but now you're buried with Christ. You died with Christ. You put on a new man. A lot of people says, boy, if I just had another chance. If I just had another chance, I'd be a better person. Well, guess what? We all have that chance. It's just sometimes hard for us to see it, isn't it? We come out of that baptistry, we're white as snow. Okay? You got another chance. Now it's up to you to take advantage of that chance. And that's what he's telling the brethren here. You got another chance. That's the mystery. Everybody was saved. Jews, the Greeks, the poor, the rich, the slave, there's no difference anymore. And that's a hard concept for them back there because they own slaves. You mean my slave's better, as good as I am? Absolutely. That's God's concept. And sometimes that's hard to see. Judy Boss, 4, 5, and 6.
Christ, who is our life, appears, and you also will appear with him in glory. Therefore, put to death the members which are on the earth, fornication, passion, evil desire, and covetousness, which is idolatry. Because of these things, the wrath of God is coming upon the sons of disobedience.
Okay, here he's talking about the old life, and he lists several things. What are all of these things that he lists here? What is the common denominator of all these things that he lists? They are all what? They're all sins. That's right. You got that one right. They're sexual sins, aren't they? All of those sins that he lists are from a fleshly, sexual standpoint. And that's what they were doing at that time. That's the life they lived. Fornication. Is that sexual? Absolutely. Uncleanness. Sexual. Inordinate affection. Sexual. Evil concupiscence. Well, yeah. Covetousness, which is adultery. They, even in their covetous and their worship in adultery, they were sexual in that sense. So everything that he lists here were sexual things, sexual sins. He says, they're gone. They're gone. You got to do away with those. For which things' sake the wrath of God cometh upon the children of disobedience. Can't do that anymore. This new man that you got is not allowed to do that. Now, when you take something out, and he's taking quite a few things out right here that they did, what do you got to do? When you take them out, you got to put something back in. And that's something we have to do and something we have to learn. 7, yes.
Romans chapter 6, Ron referred to what that said about being buried through him in baptism. But later on in that, middle of that chapter, he talks about how that in verse 14, sin shall not have dominion over you, for you are not under law, but under grace. So we just need to stay focused that we're not death doesn't have dominion over us.
That's right.
All those sins that you talked about, that's not part of the way we live. But we still need the grace of God, too.
That's right. Good point. This new man doesn't have to do those things anymore. And baptism is amazing, too, that the fact that all these things that you did, even though you're a bad person, even though we're a bad person, when we are obedient to God and come to contact the blood of Christ, which died for us, it's amazing. Those things are gone. What a great thing that is. A second chance, that we've got a second chance. Now, when we do that and we become a new man, do we still have doubts about those things? Are they still a challenge for us? Is it an automatic thing? Well, I'm good now. I'm okay now. Don't have to do those things. It's still a big challenge for us, isn't it? The temptation is still there, all right? And we have to overcome that. Drew, would you read 7, 8, and 9, please?
Walk in these ways. Now you must also rid yourselves of all such things as rage, malice, slander, and filthy language from your lips. Do not lie to each other.
Okay, so he lists a bunch of sexual sins, and now these are sins of, Craig gave a lesson about this about 2 weeks ago, and what that lesson was on the what? It's on the tongue, okay? These are sins of the tongue. They're just as bad as these other sins that he's listed here. And we have a challenge with those too, don't we? Anger. Did you ever have an anger problem? Did you ever get angry about anything? I've never seen anybody that didn't get angry about something, okay? Now, you can be righteous anger sometimes. Jesus did that. But I mean other things that just bug you to death, you know. And you know what? Most of the time we get angry, it's about really what? Nothing. It's about nothing. So we need to be, that's a problem for us. That's a problem with our tongues. Do you ever say, man, I wish I hadn't said that, you know? How many times have you ever said that in your life? I can't count the times that I've probably said that. I'll tell you a story about angry. We had an older gentleman that worked with us at Sherwin-Williams, and I came in. I was just a young kid at that time. And when I came in, he just jumped me about something. I don't even remember what it was about. I mean, and he had a wad of papers in his hand. And he slapped me across the face with that wad of papers. And back then, he was behind the desk. Before I knew it, I cleared the desk. And I had him by the throat. And I was just about to let it go. And then I thought, what am I doing? What am I doing? And I backed off and I said, I'm sorry, I was wrong. And I was wrong. I shouldn't have done that. Certainly he was wrong. But did you ever get provoked that you'd want to really hit somebody like that? We need to be careful, don't we? We need to be careful. I'll tell you another incident. There was a gentleman who was a painter in Metropolis. He had the worst temper of any man I've ever seen. Any man. And he would rave over nothing. I think he was given a dinner at a Methodist church. And the food was on the table, and people were having a great time. And somebody said something cross to him. He jumped up on the table, throwing food and screaming and hollering and pointing. Very next day or so, he came over to my store. And he wanted some paint on a Sunday. And he was raving mad about something, I don't know. So I said, come into the office. I want to talk to you. So he did, and he sat down. His name was Smith. I'm not going to tell you who he was, but nobody knew him anyway, knows him anyway. But he sat down, and I said, Mr. Smith, you're going to hurt somebody. You're going to hurt yourself. You got to take care of that temper. And he began to cry. He says, I can't do it, Charles. I have a hard time with anger. I said, you need some help. The very next week, he got in an argument with his son, and his son put him in the hospital. That's how bad he was, fighting his son. So anger can be terrible, can't it? So it's something that we need to control. Wrath. We don't want to be wrathful people. Malice. That's a big one. Like sometimes it's hid. Somebody has malice against you, but guess what? They never say anything to you about it. They never say anything to you about malice. I can't stand that guy, but I'm not going to say anything to him. Believe me, it's better to say something to the person. Then maybe you can work it out. These lists, you may not have any trouble with these, and I hope you don't. But God knows us, doesn't he? He knows who we are. Blasphemy, all right? What they choose Jesus of what was the thing they choose Jesus of blaspheming? God.
He said he was of the Father, that he and the Father were one.
All right? He was just telling the what? Just telling the, and that's the thing that got him in trouble more than anything else, was the fact that the Jews' attitude about God, there's one God, and you can't be God, okay? You can't be God. God's not like you. We're expecting somebody else. And that's the thing that got Jesus in trouble. And he was telling the truth. On the cross, when Jesus died, they railed against him. Come down from the cross. If you're God, come down. But you know what? There was a Roman soldier at the foot of the cross. And after Jesus died and they had all the thunder and the lightning and the earthquake, remember what he said? This is truly what? Truly the Son of God. Here's a guy that, not a religious person probably, but he recognized who Jesus was. And that's what we need to do. Filthy communications. We can all be guilty of that. I had a painter that came into the store, and he had a 4-letter vocabulary. When you talk to him, it was, well, Charles Blank, did this blank. I went off there, blank. Every word you'd have to beep out, So finally I just said, whoa. You need to change your vocabulary. Learn some new words, okay? Don't get away from those words that you're speaking now. You ever had anybody like that? Just every other word. I think, do you know any other good words? Let's have some good words. Get them out of your mouth. Greg, you were right about that tongue. Gets you in trouble, doesn't it? Anybody else? I've told what things that I know about these verses. Anybody has any comments on these verses? Things of the tongue. It says, lie not one to another, seeing that you have put off the old man with his deeds. Lying is deception, isn't it? Sometimes we could lie and never say a what? Never say a word. Okay? It's deception. Is it a lie? Is it not a sin? Is it not just as bad as some of these other ones we talked about, fornications? And that's a problem we have. We try to label sins. Well, this is worse than that one. This is worse than that one. Well, it was just a white lie that I told. We just need to be careful with what we say with our tongues. Patrick, 9, 10, and 11.
Do not lie to one another, since you have put off the old man with his deeds, and put on the new man, who is renewed in knowledge according to the image of him who created him. Where there is neither Greek nor Jew, circumcised nor uncircumcised, barbarian, Scythian, slave nor free, but Christ is all and in all.
Verse 11 is a very important word. It's something that we need to see as well as they need to see it. There's neither Greek, neither Jew, neither circumcision nor uncircumcision, don't mean anything, nor barbarian, Scythian, bound nor free, but Christ in all and in all. Scythians were a northern tribe, and they were a bad group. I'm going to tell you what, they were a bad group. Don't be like those people. And they practice bad things. Continue to practice those things. Don't do those things. And we say to ourselves, well, Charlie, I'm not prejudiced about anything. Be careful when you say that. Be careful when you say that. Somewhere down the line, you might be prejudiced about something. We're not perfect. We're working on that, aren't we? Do we have to work on that? When somebody does something wrong to somebody, and it's a country or, well, I hate the Russians, okay? Well, they're people too, aren't they? Maybe we might hate or can't stand the Russian leadership, but the Russian guy's out there just trying to make a living for his family, growing potatoes, okay? He's a person just like we are. And he's free, just like we are today. Any questions so far? 12, 13, and 14, Judy Webb. Okay, thank you. That's good, Judy. Thank you. All right. I said when we put out the bad things, we got to put in the good things. This is the good things the Lord wants us to put on. Forbearing one another. Sometimes somebody bugs you, but you need to forbear those people, okay? You need to look and see what kind of day they're having. Forgiving one another, all right? Well, that's hard, Charles. Yes. God didn't say these were easy things, did he? But it replaces those old things, all right? We need to forgive one another. If any man have a quarrel against any, even as Christ forgave you, you also. That's the reason we do it. Christ does it for us. Go ahead, Joe. Thank you very much for the class.